Hello, hello, and good morning. Happy Sunday, restaurant bailouters, food tribers, and anyone who is joining us live on our official Facebook page. My name is Terrence Latimer, and I am the founder of Food Tribe. We're here today to chat a little bit regarding attracting and hiring top talent in light of COVID-19 and getting back to normal. And so, what does that mean? Well, if you've been watching or reading current events, one of the issues that the restaurant industry is facing in light of COVID-19 is getting back to business. And so, one of the things that we are, I'm sure, all aware of is at the height of the pandemic, getting food, getting a bite to eat was super challenging. Restaurants, food businesses, grocery stores, farmers markets, there were essentially we had to create new ways of operating, new ways of accessing, the food that was so important to America every day. And as a result of some of those changes, meaning, having to, perhaps invest in outdoor dining facilities, or, maybe a restaurant wasn't able to be compliant in terms of, the updated sanitary requirements from COVID-19, such as, maybe providing masks or, the extra supply of gloves or the extra sanitizers and cleaners and disinfectants that were required. Or perhaps, their county experience, stricter operational measures that they, just weren't prepared for. And so one of the issues that we've seen in the restaurant industry last year is that America's $1 trillion. Well, we were originally projected to do $1 trillion, or the restaurant industry, excuse me, was originally projected to do $1 trillion in revenue. And as a result of COVID-19, that number just completely went away, right? Lots of restaurants shut down, lots of businesses closed, lots of people lost their jobs, and getting food, was still something that was super necessary. Everyone still has to eat, or still had to eat. And so as America is moving past the pandemic, right, there's been some really great news in terms of obviously even just the development of several vaccines, which are now on the market. Lots more people are getting vaccinated, which is also super fantastic, which means that, hopefully we will all be healthier and safer as a country. But one of the challenges that we are seeing is that as restaurants are beginning to, receive some of these benefits, right, of, people being able to return to their businesses in order to enjoy their food again, um, they're having some challenges, some additional challenges, some additional struggles that Food Tribe is here to help solve. And so, if you guys remember, our restaurant bailout initiative started out in 2020, last year, as a result of a challenge that Food Tribe received from Berea Pasta. And Berea basically said, hey, Food Tribe, if you guys have some ideas on some ways to bail out the restaurant industry in light of COVID, in light of what's going on with COVID-19, by all means, go for it. And they gave us a bit of seed money to develop a plan. And so over the course of a year, we decided that we are going to focus on research and development, right? We are focused on understanding just all the different ways that the restaurant industry has been impacted as a result of COVID-19. We're going to, then release a research report as part of our upcoming, that coincides, I should say, with our upcoming Food Culture and Technology Conference. And then from there, we're going to present just, some ideas that we've got as a result, some of the ideas that we've got as a result of the research that could potentially help to bail out the restaurant industry. And so, again, just as a commitment to, continuing that research and understanding what's going on in the market and in the space that restaurants operate in the food space, it becomes on Food Tribe to then help disseminate, the message, right? To talk about or to discuss some of the research that we are seeing or taking note of, particularly the research that is actionable, that restaurant businesses and food businesses can do something with in order to change the narrative so they can bail themselves out. And so again, just one of the things that we've been hearing in the market, and we'll check out some links here in a bit, but it's, restaurants are ready to get back open, or at least some restaurant managers and operators are. But one of the challenges that they're facing, again, is getting people to come back to work. It has just been, a huge challenge for restaurants who are, seeking to, quickly repair some of the damage that COVID-19 wreaked on their businesses. And so, as they are, looking to, feed more people, right? Hungry consumers, hungry diners, hungry eaters in America, they're having a capacity issue. They can't get out their food because there's no one there to make it, or to serve it, or to shop for it. And so, not only are we, gonna just discuss the overall market and maybe why restaurants and why food businesses are having some difficulties, hiring and attracting top talent, and getting them to come back to work. But we're also gonna discuss, some potential solutions that restaurants and food brands can take advantage of. From there, we're gonna have a bit of a watch party, or a watch party. We're gonna talk a little bit about, Food Tribe has been working in the restaurant space since 2015. We actually had a training just a few years ago with Friends of Food Tribe Bourbon Fat, which is a human design centered thinking firm that helps organizations achieve some of their hiring and business operations goals. And so we had a really great chat not too long ago regarding just some strategies that restaurants could take advantage of in order to attract top talent, or get them to come back, or get them to come to work, right? Like engagement, ways to keep employees engaged, ways to design like compensation packages. So there's going to be a lot of great information, a lot of great data, right, that we can consider and take advantage of through this video, right, as restaurant owners, so that we can operate. I'm a little bit tongue-tied today, guys. But in order to optimize our businesses, because that's the whole goal, is we are looking to optimize our businesses so we can bail ourselves out, right? The goal is we want to bail out American restaurants. One quick stat for us, that I would love for us to consider is just the fact that, at one point, restaurants accounted for 1 in 4 of the 10 million jobs lost last year, right? And so if we just consider how big of a undertaking this is, getting restaurants and restaurant employees back to work, it's these are a lot of jobs that need to be filled within a relatively short amount of time. And so it doesn't mean it's probably going to be challenging, right? And as a result of the work that Food Tribe is doing, and that we continue to do, is we want to make that a little bit less challenging, right? So it's, if we can really understand just how we got here, why we got here, our assumption is that we can not ever get here again, right? And so again, as part of our approach with our restaurant bailout initiative, providing this content, some of these trainings, is let's go about this problem intelligently, right? We know that this is a really big problem. It's impacting a lot of big companies, right? And so if we are looking to solve this really big problem, maybe let's make it a little bit more manageable, a little bit more digestible, right? By understanding, the larger issues, and then like the smaller things that we can do. And that, really goes in line with who has been a key figure for our restaurant bailout initiative, Mr. George Washington Carver, who, if you had an opportunity to join us for our first restaurant bailout event, which took place this past February, our Food and Science Symposium, Mr. Carver was our honorary guest, I guess we should say. I mean, he's been dead for quite some time now, but he was certainly a figurehead that was used to inspire a lot of the topics, content, trainings, and research that we conducted during that event. So it was really about helping our restaurant owners and operators understand how that what it is that they do, right? Owning a restaurant business, and owning a food truck, owning a food cart, whatever your choice of restaurant or food business is. There's both an art and a science to it, right? The art aspect, comes in terms of like how creative you can be with your restaurant menus in order to, then get your food stories out and attract customers into your restaurant. And the science aspect then becomes, well, how, running a business is quite literally a science, right? It's being able to attach numbers to your creativity, right? Like how many slices of cheesecake do you need to sell? How many Jamaican patties do you have to sell, right? That will then keep you competitive. And so it's Mr. Washington Carver is a great example of someone who understood that food was both an art and a science. And so at a time in America's history where, America was, ultimately decimated as a result of the Civil War. Mr. George Washington Carver went through pockets of African American communities throughout America that, they were on farms um, that were just in bad parts of the country, right? Typically their soil wasn't very fertile, and it didn't really, at a time in American history when the agricultural system was just so important to the everyday man. um, you know Owning a plot of land whose soil wasn't reliable, right, quite literally impacted the amount of food that you could grow, feed yourself with, sell with, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, Mr. George Washington Carver is sometimes incorrectly credited with inventing the peanut butter. He did not invent peanut butter, but what he did invent is or create is 300 documented uses of the peanut. And so, if we, consider that he actually created a formula, a method for taking. Not only did he create multiple varieties of peanuts, or blend multiple varieties of peanuts, which is an art and a science, but he was created a process for taking peanut shells, peanut casings, in order to revitalize a land's soil. And so, just, I mean, a brilliant man, who understood again that agriculture, farming, is both an art and a science. And he lived and breathed that. He was also a poet. He was also an artist, but he was a documented scientist. And so, one of my favorite quotes, and one that has been inspiring a lot of the work that we've been doing as part of our Restaurant Bailout Initiative, is when you do the common things in life in an uncommon way, you will command the attention of the world. And so as we go about, setting the tone for our conversation today, as we, consider this problem of hiring people, right? Maybe we are in a very infertile part of of time, right? Or of the country. Maybe the soil for the restaurant business isn't quite right. But what are some things that we can do in order to revitalize our hiring process of attracting top talent, right? Maybe the old model isn't working anymore. So today's training is really about us getting creative or thinking creatively in order to solve this very common problem of hiring people and doing it in an uncommon way. And so, we've been talking a bit already about, just the current status of restaurant jobs, and we'll dive into that a bit more. Again, we'll talk a little bit about some of the more concrete reasons why restaurants are struggling to hire. And then that's when we're going to have our watch party. And if there are any guests that are interested in asking any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I'll be monitoring the comments, throughout our watch party, so that we can, so that I can, make sure to give you any help that you might need. So, what is the problem? Why are restaurants having a hard time hiring? We realize that restaurants are facing a workforce shortage. And this is as a result of the assumption is that It's because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we saw a decrease as a result of COVID-19 in 2.23 million jobs. So 2,230,000 jobs, right, in the restaurant industry. And so, that then becomes a huge gap, right, in terms of like, so for just doing some quick math, we then have to say, okay, well, how many restaurants do we have in America, right? And then, maybe we can then, start assigning some a methodology or like a data capturing process to, or excuse me, we can maybe start estimating like the number of employees that were lost per restaurant, or something along those lines, right? But what we know is that, as a whole, as an industry, the restaurant industry lost 2,230,000 jobs, right? And so as we are then looking to fill that gap, restaurant owners or restaurant operators have been, they have to kind of put on their magic hats and say, okay, well, based off of my operating, the number of hours that, I have available to sell food, right? The number of customers that are coming in every day, well, I'm going to need X number of people, X number of staff in order to manage this process, for the next 30, 60, 90, however many days as business starts, getting back to normal. And that is a challenge, right? Trying to anticipate the number of people that you'll need at any given time, right? Because oftentimes that means that you maybe are leaving money on the table, you're having to close down, maybe you're having to change your menu, right? Because you don't have quite the capacity to, or quite the ability to do what your full restaurant would be able to do. But what we know is that pretty rapidly, dining restrictions are being lifted across the country, right, on a county level. Specific in LA, really, LA, which is a huge portion of America's population, at least from a city perspective, it's one of America's largest cities, has released a plan in order to begin phasing in the process for additional occupancy in our restaurants, moving towards like opening movie theaters again, seeing increase attendance at some of like our sporting events. So right now it's like the businesses, I guess I should say, is starting to get back to normal based off of mandates from the city, from the county, from the state, and the federal government, right? And so as America starts getting, opening back up again, the anticipation is that people have been cooped up in the house for a long time and they want to get out. They're excited to go out and eat and drink again, have drinks, watch their favorite sporting events, doing all the things that America loves to do and that we're known for, right? Getting like our, that we know that food is it's experiential. It's about sharing things and with people and having conversations and experiences and so people are desperate for that again, having been cooped up in the house all day. And so we anticipate this to be a pop in summer. Well, hopefully if the restaurant industry is able to get back on its way, right? Because again, food is just such a big part of how we do business, of how we do things in America. And so as we, consider that restaurant owners or restaurant operators are having this challenge, they're raising their hand and saying, hey, we need help hiring. We anticipate that, we're going to have a lot more business coming up. The challenge becomes designing ways to, get, or, being able to attract people to come back because they are, the anticipation is like, hey, if business is starting to get back to normal, internally, operations should be getting back to normal as well. Well, an important part of a restaurant's operations are its people, but that part doesn't seem to be getting back to normal, or maybe it is, and it's just moving a lot slower than we had anticipated. But the head of Darden Restaurants is one of the largest restaurant owners and operators in America. I believe that they own the Olive Garden or Olive Garden brand and several other brands here in America. But on a call with analysts last month, I believe as part of their, just like their annual outlook because as a publicly traded company, right, you are, fiscally responsible for, releasing your numbers and communicating business strategy, et cetera, et cetera. But, he mentioned that, or the CEO of Darden, Eugene Lee, said that the biggest challenges that they are having as an organization is staffing, right? Staffing is one of the biggest initiatives that they're going to be focused on for the remainder of the year, right? And so that guidance, looking at the big fish, it then gives us a little bit of context to understand what the little fish are starting to have to face, right? So if we know that this publicly traded billion-dollar company is experiencing problems hiring, which I believe was before the pandemic, they had 165,000 hourly employees, but now they were down to 115,000. So if they're looking to at least just get back to normal, right, that means that this one company is looking to fill a gap of $50,000 or not $50,000, 50,000 people, right, just to get back to pre-pandemic numbers, right, based off of this overall number that we saw lost last year, which is 2.23 million jobs. I don't know if those are hourly jobs, but that helps us to get some context, right? So 50,000 jobs from the largest company in America, or from one of the largest restaurant operators in America, like, that gives us context. Okay, well, what about these smaller firms or smaller restaurant owners and operators that maybe are, they don't need to hire 50,000 people, but they need to hire 10,000 people, right? Or 10 people, or 5 people. Are they going to have the budgets or the ability to compete with a Darden? Well, maybe not. And so, again, that then is where Food Tribe comes in and where we're looking to offer some help. So if we consider like the overall problem of why restaurant or workers aren't coming back, I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? There's some people will say one thing, other people will say another thing, and typically the truth lies somewhere in the middle. If we do a bit of research in terms of what some of the restaurant owners and operators are saying, well, a lot of them believe it's as a result of some of the policy that we saw at the federal level in order to help America survive the pandemic. And so, one of the things that President Trump and President Biden, then extended into his his term in office were unemployment benefits, right? Unemployment benefits. There was legislation. There were laws created that created a fund, emergency funds, for all of the Americans that weren't able to work in light of the pandemic, right? So if you weren't able to work your normal job or work a regular job because your business was shut down or closed or if you were let go as a result of COVID-19, this was an opportunity to, be able to pay your bills and keep your lights on, right? There were several programs, at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, but unemployment was a huge one. And the challenge with unemployment always becomes, how long and how much, right? And that is a conversation that we are continuing to have right now, right? And so a lot of the larger restaurant owners and operators are typically making the argument that, hey, I can't compete with the federal government because they're paying the best, right? So if the federal government were to stop providing unemployment benefits, that is one less person to compete with in order to hire an employee, right? In order to generate for someone to generate some income. And so, some restaurant owners and operators are advocating that the federal government stop completely with unemployment assistance. Others are saying like, hey, let's put like a new deadline on it. Let's revisit it. But the challenge then becomes that if you go to the other side, which is typically the worker, well, the story is a little bit different. The story becomes, well, hey, and this is there was actually a UC Berkeley food labor research center study done on a national basis. It's a national study, and one of the core gripes of restaurant workers and employees is like, hey, well, you know what? I would come back to work if you would pay me more and pay me better, because the work environment, it's a dangerous job. It's backbreaking work, and I don't make very much money. And again, this is all very complicated stuff because states have different uh, 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 guidance in terms of like minimum wage, right? But there seems to be a desire, a want for an increased minimum wage on the behalf of the employees, right? You know, what I can say is when I was working restaurants in college, I was working in Texas, right? I was waiting tables, and in Texas, if you know, the restaurant, if a restaurant was able to prove out that I made at least what the federal minimum wage was, with a combination of a, you know, a low hourly wage plus my tips, well, that could then be used to combine in order to, you know, define how much I made for the year, right? So, you know, I was making like $2.13. This was years ago, right? But I was making $2.13 an hour. I don't know if that number is still the same in Texas or not, but I was making $2.13 an hour plus tips, right? So then I had to report my tips, and you know, typically wherever I averaged out, it was at least, you know, the federal minimum wage, and if it wasn't, then the restaurant was responsible for writing me a check at the end of the year or something along those lines, right? Well, working in California, when I was working restaurants in California, I was waiting tables, completely different, right? In California, the state demanded that I pay that I was paid a, I believe at the time, a $10, there might have been a $7. It was like between like $7 and $10 per hour plus tips, right? Like now I still have to like declare my tips, you know, but you know, the guidance from on a state level was different. It was a different interpretation, or it's just there were additional requirements in order to, you know, operate a business in the state of California, right? And so, you know, so when we consider what low pay means, well, low pay means something different to different people, and so it's just something that we want to consider as we start trying to attract and the top restaurant talent to come back to work, right? So if they're telling us like, hey, well, you know what, I wouldn't take unemployment assistance if I could make at least this or more from you, you know, does that mean that you are going to have to dig into your pockets a little bit more, right? And are you going to have to switch up your menu in order to lower costs so that you can, you know, start paying people more? Maybe, right? But this is direct feedback that we're getting, you know, at least from the Berkeley Food Labor Research Center, right? You know, something else that we're hearing, or that Food Tribe is, you know, again was just interpreting, is that you know, and what affordable childcare options was, you know, certainly one of the things that we noticed in some of the research, but that was just part of a wider trend in that pay is not the only thing that restaurant employees are looking for, right? You know, things like programs that are, you know, currently in the market are, you know, we're starting to see like equity programs, like where businesses are rewarding employees with a percentage of the business, or, you know, they are providing childcare, they're providing, you know, some sort of like educational program. And so is where, you know, I'm really excited about the watch party that we're going to have here in a bit, because then we're going to learn a little bit more about ways to, you know, separate out motivation and how to motivate our employees. Money is just one way to motivate people, right? What we're starting to see as we, you know, move towards this post-pandemic trend is restaurants are starting to understand the importance of intrinsic motivation, which is the ways to motivate teammates, team members, not based on external stuff like money, right, but on internal motivating factors that keep people waking, you know, wanting to get out of bed and are excited about coming to work every day, right? And so, you know, that then becomes, you know, one of the some of the feedback that we're hearing from restaurant employees is that, you know, I just don't, you know, I don't feel bought into your vision for this business, right? It's a job. I'm coming in, I'm getting my paycheck, and then I'm leaving, right? And it's just, you know, I'm just kind of phoning it in, and I don't really care. Well, you know, if that is where we are starting out, if that is the story, right, of what it's like working at your restaurant or your food business, well, that then has an ability to trickle into the type of people that you are attracting and coming in, right? The quality of service that they are providing, and then your customer service, right? And if your customer service isn't there, well, then, you know, we might be back to square one. We might be losing customers all over again. And so we're getting ready to watch a quick video where we're gonna discuss developing meaningful relationships with your employees, some of the things that we've been talking about. So this is a really fun conversation that Food Tribe had with our friends Alan and Adam of Bourbon Fat, which is, again, a firm designed to help organizations develop more meaningful employee experiences. Hiring is one of those experiences, and your company culture is one of those experiences that, you know, is going to be super important as we move to, post-pandemic. So we're going to learn a little bit about aligning your restaurant goals to culture development, how that leads to happier employees. We're going to talk a little bit about how, again, we sometimes forget that our employees live outside of work, and they sometimes need help with that. And then, you know, one of the things that we're going to talk about is how, you know, listening is a great way in order to get the story out about your food, right? You'll be able to get like some, develop some resources, some goals in order to help your customers get what they want. So bear with me one second while I pull up the video for us and get us situated. Okay. And this is found on Food Tribe's official Facebook page. So it's about a 40-minute video. Or excuse me, it is about a 40-minute video, but this video can be found not only on our Facebook page, but also in the Food Tribe, our official YouTube channel. So please, please, please subscribe to our official YouTube channel so you can not miss any important restaurant bailout updates, including Food Mania, which is taking place in a couple of weeks. So more on leveraging our Food Mania platform in order to you know, get out the word about your restaurant. That being said, so we're gonna have a quick watch party. We'll watch this video for about 40 minutes. We will have a portion for question and answer. If there's anybody in the audience that is interested in, you know, some just some of my feedback, or, you know, Food Tribe's help in order to attract top talent to your restaurant, and then I'll go ahead and get you on out of here. All right, let's go. All right, awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm super excited to be chatting with my buddies Alan and Adam Bourbon Fat. You know, but just for anybody who has never heard of a Bourbon Fat, I would love for, you know, one or both of you to just give us you know, some quick background.
Sure. Well, we founded ourselves a few years ago and officially launched probably in the last year and a half. And so we have a passion for making work meaningful, helping companies kind of go beyond what is engaging employees and making it more of an experience. So often the measure is around engagement. And we kind of break that down into, well, what leads to that? That's kind of the end game, and what are the things that make an employee happy and find meaning and connection in their work and with their colleagues and with their leaders. And so we value design and human-centered approach to things, and that's how we apply those methodologies to how we work.
That's awesome. Adam, is Adam still on the line? Did he hop on?
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. My Zoom screen only showed Alan and myself, and so I got a little nervous. Sorry about that.
Hiding, no problem.
What about you, man? Would you have anything to add to that?
No, I think he says it well. You know, we call ourselves an employee experience design company, so we're kind of one part traditional consulting firm and one part agency.
Right.
So the focus on design and sort of how we bring that to teams and organizations is really what we're excited about.
That's awesome. So, just kind of, I think that, number one, what you guys do is awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the call today. As a refresher, Food Tribe is a 360 platform that, works with restaurants in order to, fulfill our mission of connecting good people to good food. So, that means just offering tips and tricks and advice for restaurants and food brands to, better connect with their audiences. And, I think as part of that experience is, learning how to, better connect with your team and your teammates, right? If you're able to better connect with your teammates, it makes the process of getting your product, your service, your value, to your customer, potential customers a little bit easier. And so, what I would say about, kind of your guys' role, you threw out some phrases that I would love to maybe get a little bit more clarification for someone who has never heard of, employee engagement is something that everyone should have heard, should know about. But if someone has never heard of a human-centered design or design thinking, I would love maybe for, your guys' explanation on what those things are and how they might be applicable to someone, to the average person maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way I think about it is just really it's just a problem solving process that really puts the user as the key focus in the process, and it starts with understanding who your user is, and then you work backwards into a new product.
So I think that is a super important thing that I just want us to consider is if we are considering that our restaurant or our food business has users, well, yeah, certainly the user that most restaurants are focused on are customers, right? Customers are super important to our business because that is what allows us to stay in business. Well, the change in thinking right now needs to be on, okay, well, we need to also attract customers. We also have to attract employees, right? So how can we start thinking from the perspective of our employees so that we can design a way to add value to them so that they can solve the problems that we are having versus, just doing the way that things have been done, right?
Product or a new service. In our case, changes to how a company operates internally and how they treat and interact with their employees, their teams, and all of that.
Right. That's awesome. And would you have anything to add to that, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we like to stress most about it is really the empathy piece. And so whether it's for your customers, whether it's for your employees, what we do is really help bring that empathy perspective to both sides of that. Yeah. So how do you feel if you're a leader or you're a restaurant owner, how are you making your employees feel? And how are you relating to that? Are you really understanding kind of the ins and outs of what their job looks like day to day?
Right.
To customers, like what are the friction points that your customers are running into, and how many steps are they having to take to do things? And so sometimes removing yourself from that kind of plateau where you're above kind of what's going on, like putting yourself back down into that day-to-day experience, right, and feeling it for yourself, really understanding from that perspective without judgment. And so when we think of the human-centered design, that's really what it is getting back to a place where you connect with the people that you're providing a service to or employment to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love everything that you just said. And I think that a lot of that was rooted in one key word, which is empathy.
Yeah.
Right? I think empathy is something that, as business owners, as colleagues, as friends, like anyone that we have to have a relationship with, understanding, kind of what they have to deal with, and what's going on in their lives, and their interactions and all that kind of stuff, is definitely an opportunity for employees or employers, excuse me, to provide more value or better experience for again the people that they have to touch on, right? Mm-hmm. Me personally, as a startup founder, building Food Tribe has been a little bit of a challenge because, we're in this place where we're bootstrapping and trying to figure it out, as we go. And so, if we're not able to provide our employees or the people that we're working with, some of those traditional things, right, in terms of, salary or like benefits or, all that kind of stuff, it's like, well, what are some of the things that we can do to make the relationship, to make, to have empathy for, the people that we're working with and what it is that they need, right? Yep. Which is one of the reasons why we decided to work with the Bourbon Fat team again, right, is to develop processes and developing an employee experience that is, going to make our team want to, continue to work with Food Tribe and to continue to want to learn things, which is what it's all about. We all work for people that, we can grow with and that we can learn from. And so I guess my next question is, mostly around, I guess your background or your guys' background in the restaurant and the hospitality space. And, particularly I would love to hear, what your guys' thoughts are around employee experience in the restaurant industry.
Sure. Well, personally, I mean, I've just growing up, I kind of grew up in kitchens and back areas of restaurants and bars. My mother was a barmaid and a cook. And so I was just kind of always around that environment. So I kind of always got the behind the scenes kind of feel for it and kind of empathy myself for the people that work in the industry.
Right.
And kind of knowing the chaos that goes on, but chaos that goes on there. And so I always just had an appreciation from that.
That's awesome. Yeah, working in restaurants is an interesting gig. I waited tables throughout college, which was a ton of fun, and that's how I got my start. I mean, if there's one thing that I noticed, and you tell me, I just noticed that there was a lot of turnover, like a high turnover in the restaurant industry. And I always wondered why. I mean, are there any like things that maybe you can kind of think of offhand, which lead to so many people like leaving their jobs in the restaurant or hospitality space?
It's interesting because we haven't had clients per se yet from the restaurant business, and so we did some research recently, kind of collectively online, trying to dig into this a little bit more, and that was one of the key themes that came out of it, was kind of turnover and absenteeism and
right,
and digging into why that exists and why that happens. And so seems like there's a lot of different possible explanations for that. One is just kind of the, I think a lot of places are looking for kind of service help, and the people that are looking for those jobs often tend to be like college students like yourself, or first time workers, so just turning 16 sort of thing, want to earn some money to have that independence from their parents, but also having not a connection to work yet,
right,
and so maybe not experiencing that sense of loyalty that employers would like to see, because when we were 16 and we were young and we were starting our first jobs, probably was not our first priority in our lives at that time. And so trying to get that, how do you get somebody to connect while they're there, and giving it all they got for the short time that you probably had them.
Right.
Important. Turnover, it seemed like there was, there were two distinct things. So I think a lot of people that were kind of sharing, and we talked about in our collection, it was probably about 80 different respondents to this. And there was a key difference between the places that said they were experiencing high turnover versus the ones who were not. And so looking at the ones that said, we actually don't have a turnover problem, we don't have an absentee problem, and asking them, well, why is that? What do you do? And some of the core things that they focused on were kind of having that empathy for the people that they hire and understanding, getting really to understand their situations. Why is it that they're looking for work? Why is it they want to be in this business? What are their aspirations in this? Having that flexibility with their schedules, providing them really good training. Some of the places that seem to have a problem with turnover, it didn't seem like they're expecting everybody to kind of come in with this experience, right? And having worked in kitchens before and knowing about food and having this long, list of prerequisites.
Right.
Whereas the places that were keeping their employees, they were investing that time and energy to take those people that didn't necessarily have the experience or the skills, but kind of had that same value system or appreciation for customers or kind of the work ethic, and working with them to develop those other areas. So those were some of the key differences that came out.
Wow, that's that was great, and that was really insightful, Alan. I appreciate you doing that research for us, and just being so thoughtful and explaining that. What my dogs are barking in the background. The first place that my head went, as you were explaining that, was where I was at when I was 16. So getting a little anecdotal, when I was 16, I was working in the drive-through at Taco Bell, and all my friends from high school used to come, and they would want like free tacos, and I was always I was always that guy, right?
I would have been one of those people.
And so but thinking about it, I I was busting my butt for not very much money. I was lucky enough that the job was like super close to my home, and so it wasn't that big of a commitment to get there. But in a place like LA, right, where getting from your job can be a challenge, I was actually very lucky. But that being said, especially I worked in restaurants throughout college, but I bounced around a lot. Again, and I think a lot of the reasons behind that was because maybe I didn't feel that sense of investment, that empathy that I wanted to see, right? It's super important, especially if you're learning something, if you kind of put yourself back into a situation where you're learning something for the first time, it can be frustrating. You might be dealing. So I think that where I was trying to go here was, in a city like LA, when I was, like 16 and just starting out working in restaurants, I'd have to catch the bus to work. And so if we, consider a city like LA, like that has a ton of traffic, the bus is a pain in the butt sometimes. You sometimes have to walk to your bus station, and, but sometimes I was willing to do that if the opportunity made sense, right? Like I knew that if I was catching the bus to the right job, I could make enough amount of money that I could then invest in myself and go to school, et cetera, right? And those circumstances changed in college. When I was in Texas, it was a little bit different, right? Where I wanted to wait tables because I knew that waiting tables, I could kind of control my own destiny, and then I could also learn a little bit about the restaurant and food business, which here I am, the founder of a company, that offer software as a service to restaurant brands, right? So, you know, working in that restaurant and making $2.13 an hour plus tips was, you know, like it was good. It was flexible. I could work in between, you know, classes, right? And so, different Terrences, right? Different points in my life, still in need of and desire to want to work in food, right? But you know, that just my needs at the different times were different. At those different moments were different, and so it is super important for our restaurant owners and operators to really have a clear picture of who it is that we are trying to attract and how we can, you know, continue to motivate them so that they can, you know, achieve the things that they are looking to achieve. Money is not the only thing that people are looking to achieve. Dealing with like a million different things, and you know, if you don't have somebody that's willing to be patient and teach you and you know, kind of show you the path or you know what's on the other side, it might just be easier to leave, right? And based, I think, with the restaurant industry, you know, unfortunately, it just becomes easy to do because, you know, getting these jobs maybe isn't, you know, that big of a challenge, or, you know, because maybe a lot of these companies aren't investing into, you know, making these into roles that people want to stay with long term, right? It could be, you know, kind of a bunch of those things. So
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting when you talk about, you know, I guess the vibe and whether people are willing to sort of invest in you, because you know, there's also seems to be like you know, mistakes are costly in a restaurant environment, right? If you're messing up orders or phone calls or food, you know, it's a big deal. And so having someone new is a challenge for obvious reasons. But one of the things that stood out when we were talking to people is that the people that said that, you know, no one left threw around the word family a lot, right? So if you work in a small, small area, small business, where you guys are with each other constantly and working really, really hard. I think it's the other thing is that the work is very challenging. Like you mentioned, it's for what you get. So you have to be really invested in a lot of the things that are not pay and schedule, right? You have to be really invested in either what you're doing, the work you're doing, or the people you work with.
right.
And so I think that you know, at least from our earlier research, what we can tell is that the ones that can help, you know, are better at creating that family environment are going to have a better chance at, you know, keeping people happy and keeping them there, and then won't have to go through that training problem in the long run. You know, once you get people that want to stay, it really becomes less of an investment in training somebody once a week versus, you know, longer timeline.
Totally. I mean, that's just, everybody wants that connection, right? You know, it's just like, I mean, obviously you want a job so that, you know, you can take care of yourself, take care of your family. But on I think even deeper level, I mean, everyone wants to advance and they want to achieve things and they want to have a good time or good experience while they do it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have the ability to, you know, take care of yourself, take care of your family, learn, develop, and grow, and also like enjoy the people that you're working with or the experience. I mean, I don't know about you, but that makes me want to like just continue to give back and continue to give like excellent work, because there's a sense of fulfillment, and I think that's what everyone wants. Like no one's different in that case, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that element of compassion, and just hearing some of these kind of successful owners or managers were doing in terms of, you know, helping people with their situations outside of their life that were interfering with them getting to work. So if it was a transportation problem, like working something out amongst the team or them as a manager to be able to help in that situation. So that wasn't a friction point for that employee or those employees anymore to be able to get there. Or if it was something around childcare, you know, kind of that, again, like a family, people pitching in and kind of helping where they can. And at the same time, there's this element of empowerment,
right,
that was coming through, which from a few of the places that were using that kind of terminology with the family, when they were talking about looking for new employees, it was starting with the folks that they already had, and even with their customers, considering them to be a part of the family too, for recommendations from that network. So rather than posting externally and looking for hires off the street, they were taking.
So do we hear what he's saying here, right? So if we are able to design these programs or design these experiences within our restaurant businesses that are attracting our employees, right, rather than us having to go seek them, well, you know, eventually what will happen is that we will continue to facilitate the family, the network, right, and our employees will start bringing other people that are similar to them to start working at your business rather than you having to recruit people. So you have like a steady supply of people that want to work with you and for you because you are, you know, your company is so attractive. Your company is different. It's thinking about a common thing, hiring in an uncommon way. We are not trying to attract employees. We are trying to attract family members.
The recommendations of people saying, you know, hey, I've got a cousin, or, you know, like my little sister is available, or I know this, I worked with this person somewhere else and they're looking for work. And so like having them vouch for another person to bring them in, one, like they've already got a connection. And now it's a little bit of accountability too for that person, because I'm not going to recommend someone that isn't going to hold their weight or that's going to call out
right
all the time or do things. So by kind of turning over a little bit of that hiring and recruiting process to the team itself would be really, really helpful.
That's awesome. Now, I mean, I think that goes down to, I think that's an expansion of, you know, again, empathy.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, also, I think that team dynamic, that culture dynamic that we're talking about, right? Like understanding what makes your team tick, and then giving them the ability to, you know, go after that and get that, right? And being a support system, and, you know, letting them know that that is the culture that you are looking to establish as one of Kelping and one of family. So I think that's great, and I would love to, I guess, hear like a practical example of that, you know, in terms of like, you know, human-centered design as it relates to, you know, the restaurant experience. Like, you know, what are some ways that me as a restaurant owner, I mean, if it's for my employees or if it's for my customers, what are some ways that I can build in that culture of, you know, putting them first and, you know, me second?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, you know, the human-centered design sort of practice applies to whether or not you want to get new customers, or, you know, kind of what we're advocating is that also how do you want to address and improve your team. And so if you care about how your team operates, you know, the best thing that any, you know, manager, leader, owner can do is really spend some time talking to them face to face and getting to know their challenges, their behaviors, their attitudes, really, really closely. And it sounds, you know, ridiculously simple, but it's very rare. It's very rare for leaders to take the time to really dig in without judgment, without any preconceived notion about what you should be feeling, or whether you should be having those feelings or not, and just really listen. And so if you do that with a customer, or you do that with, excuse me, an employee, you're going to be really surprised when people open up about what their challenges are. And if you take that info as data, as something that you can use, rather than dismissing it and saying like, well, that person's just like a pain in the ass. Like if you really take it to heart, what you have is data to change your environment, or your you know, your product or your service, whatever it is that you're offering.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough for really just spending some time asking people how they feel about how their day, what challenges they are, and really digging in and listening.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think one like really tangible piece of advice, and just kind of, you know, remembering this from kind of growing up in that environment and kind of working, you know, when I was younger and in the restaurant area as well. But there tends to be a lot of like the side conversations that happens. And so rather than kind of addressing kind of an issue or a topic, it's kind of a side comment over here to another person that's maybe not involved with it. And, it just kind of spreads itself. And I think if, managers and owners kind of can take that, like the high road, and like Adam is saying, but just bring people together collectively and having like a really transparent, authentic conversation where everyone gets to have a voice, and, things aren't hidden
Team meetings
and kind of percolating around the environment, which can hurt the culture. It's just better to get it all out on the table. And, you can pick one specific area that you want to focus on. Like, the last couple of weeks, we've been seeing an increase in call outs for shifts, and just focus on that one thing and make it very solution oriented so clearly that there's a problem with scheduling or something, but we want you to hear from you and listen to you on, why might this be happening? What are some of the root causes? And then let's figure out a solution together that will help decrease this in the future. Yep. And so kind of taking that collective, collaborative approach can be really helpful.
Yep. I think what I liked about what you said there, Alan, I mean, obviously I liked everything that you said. But one of the things that struck a chord with me is, I don't think that you said this explicitly, but that it's okay for management to have standards, right? Yeah. It's okay to, know what you want out of your employees. But, as part of that, like, sense of ownership, you do have to listen, right? And you have to say, like, hey, this is the goal. And that's leadership, right? It's like, this is the goal. This is where we are. This is what I'm noticing. How do we get there? And, like, being open to that feedback from your team, it sounds like is really, really, really important in terms of human-centered design. Would you guys say that that's correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. A team that doesn't have candor is in trouble, right? And we see this in any industry, right? So when a team can't speak honestly about what their challenges are because they won't be well received, it never you're operating at less than your potential, for sure. Because it's key to doing good work, is trusting the people you work with. But I think the other thing you said too is really, really important, is that when we advocate positive employee experiences, accountability is part of that experience. Like, we need accountability. It's a good thing. It brings out the best in our performance. There are companies where employees are happy but not held accountable, and performance suffers. But employees that are accomplishing things and are well respected and listened to, those teams outperform other teams every time. So high standards are absolutely essential if you're going to run a really, really quality business. But people also like high standards. If you get the right talent, the talent that fits your culture, with those standards in place, you can have both. They're not mutually exclusive.
And using those standards and expectations as a source of inspiration, rather than a place of fear. So oftentimes it's people can get behind a vision and they can get behind expectations, but when you're supported in trying to reach those, and you're getting the right training, you're getting the right coaching, you're not being criticized over mistakes when it's not malintent, but it's, you tried something different or something new that you were trying to do, not being beat up over that. Yeah. Those are kind of factors into that piece. Whereas if you're, being told, if you don't do this, you're going to suffer this and you're going to be fired, and like kind of hanging those things over people's heads just adds anxiety and stress, which just brings down their performance. And so just assuming that people want to do their best and then supporting them to do that, inspiring them to do that, there's a subtlety there that makes a big difference.
Yep. Yeah, and it is a subtlety, right? And I think that it's a training, and you can get better at it. It's not something that happens overnight. But yeah, I agree. And I think another thought that just kind of popped up. I don't remember where I read this article, but they or which thought leader it was, but they just talked about the differences between a team and a family, as it relates to an organization. And what I would say is that, I mean, I think that this particular thought leader was advocating more for treating your organization as a team rather than a family. But I would almost argue that there is like this back and forth, right? Where it's like, hey, like this is us, going towards like these team goals. And well, you know what? Like these team goals are really important, but you are also a person that, has value, that has needs, that this work stuff is not the end all be all, right? Like I'm here because I support you. I want us to care for each other, and I want us to improve, as a result of this relationship. And so, I think that, just having kind of both of those be a priority, or baking both of those things into your business, regardless of what vertical, you're working in, is almost the first step of human-centered design, at least from a company level, is making that your employees understand that both of those two things are important. It's like, hey, we care about you as a person, and we also care about development. So how do we align both of those two things together? Which, I think is what every company wants, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I would say, I think, the family comparison is super interesting. I think there are lots of elements of the family that would be nice if organizations and teams had more of that. But at the end of the day, if you can fire your cousin,
right. Well, that's what I was trying to get.
I mean, firing is right.
That's not a family anymore, though, right?
Right. Well, you still have to do it if you run a business. So it's this fine line of respect and sort of giving people the benefit of the doubt, and really trying to investing in their own personal success
right
outside of you. That it certainly has a family element to it, but the sort of accountability and the nature of making sure that people are actually pulling their weight in the group, I think is, something that is uniquely business.
Yeah. That's one thing too that adds just to the credibility and respect of leadership too, because while you want to have that element of inspiring and helping everybody kind of reach those expectations, if you're not dealing with true poor performance issues,
right,
it's not visible that you're the person that does continually call out all the time, or that is on their phone in the corner the entire shift, not bussing tables, not doing what they're supposed to be doing. If you consistently and visibly let that go and still have that person be a part of the team, that is going to hurt your overall culture as well. So you do have to deal with those issues.
Yeah.
By doing that, it makes those people that are performing really well, makes them feel more valued, because now they're seeing, okay, they're not going to let this person kind of distract what we're trying to do or bring us down and that way, or hurt the restaurant or hurt our tips, or all those things that are important to those people that are there for the right reasons, performing the way they're supposed to.
It almost sounds like to me that, incorporating human-centered design into any organization is really about the collective over the individual, right?
Yep.
It's like, how do we have the most amount of empathy for the most amount of people, and how does that serve us all together, which is super interesting, because it does start at the individual level, right? And individually embracing those values, and individually making that choice. So wow, that was really interesting, guys. I'm enjoying this conversation. I feel like it can go, we can keep going. I guess. Well, so I mean, for full disclosure to everyone, again, Bourbon Fat's going to be helping Food Tribe in designing our employee experience, and helping us, develop more empathy into our company. But I would love maybe for you guys to, touch on some of the different ways or some of the different products and services that people can, if they're interested in incorporating, designing a better employee experience to their company. What are some of the ways that they can work with Bourbon Fat?
Yeah. So we, it generally starts with, companies that have a challenge. So in your instance, it's growth, and how do you bring people into the culture that you want to establish. For bigger companies, it's, we want to make a change, or we've noticed that a whole section of the population isn't engaged or happy with their jobs. What do we do about that? And so those are kind of the, a lot of the starting points for when we start to interact with clients. And in that process, we teach and advocate this human-centered design research process. So we interview tons and tons of people and drill down to kind of what those insights are, and really get to the bottom of the feelings and behaviors around whatever the change or whatever is desired for the next phase of work. And so the output of that could be a number of different things. It could be us teaching leadership about just applying these methods, and so that it keeps to fuel the culture. It could be us creating experiences, even products and tangible things that leaders can use to help continue that conversation, that communication. Alan, anything else?
I mean, we hear a lot from employers. They have that what they say to their employees is often, we heard you, right? And so they want to get to that point of, we heard you. And I think where we help is that we kind of take them beyond hearing, and we really help them with the listening part of it.
Right.
Because sometimes just hearing, you're getting kind of white noise feedback. And we kind of help people really learn that art of how to ask the right questions to begin with, that are tying back into the values and the things that you want to dig into, and then really help you listen to what matters in that, and then to go even farther and dig a little bit more to get more of that voice that's behind it, so that it's not as empty. And so you can start to craft a story and start to really understand a problem. And so I think one of the main things we help do is really diagnose what the problem is. So oftentimes, people present a problem, and we help break that down and get more into, well, is that really the problem? Or is it something deeper than that? And then how do you bring people in to collectively work together on it? The end users that are being affected by it, right. How do you make them a part of the solution rather than something that's just pushed to them? Yeah. And you hope that it hits the mark, And so, on our site now, we have some products available to kind of help get at the kind of the starting points of that. So if you're someone that's not even sure of what employee experience it is, you've never heard of it before, we have a card deck, which is sort of a diagnostic that helps you very quickly sit with your employees and say, I feel this, I don't feel this, and put those into piles, and then start working from those problem areas that come out of that, and solutioning ideas around those areas. We have a kit that goes even deeper into that as well, which gets you into the kind of brainstorming and ideation and collaboration with those employees. And then we do that in person as well. So a lot of times it's I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to, ask good questions by employees. I mean, some people are intimidated by having those conversations with employees, and we can go in and help do that research for you, and then give those skills as well, so that you can do it when we're not there.
That's great. So, I mean, almost, you guys take human-centered design elements and allow organizations to, you know, again, like better optimize their business, to find problem areas and to improve, right? And that's focusing on the people and the processes, which is beautiful. You know, I mean, that is great. I mean, obviously, you guys are experts in people and, you know, running or working with organizations. You know, definitely let people know how to get in touch with you guys if they're, you know, interested in learning more about bourbon fat and implementing employee experience design in other workflows. How can they get in touch with you guys?
Very easy. Bourbonfat.com.
Boom. You know, if I'm
Right there.
I was gonna be perfectly honest with you guys. I've been spelling bourbon with an A for the better part of, I think, since I turned 21. So I just I found out.
We don't earn bourbonfat.com. We don't own that one.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're gonna find there. But the traditional spelling, yeah, we own that one.
Okay, all right. So super embarrassing, but yes,
maybe we're wrong. Maybe we got it wrong. I don't know. Either way, we like the way it looks.
No, but super excited to be working with you guys and appreciate your time today. We definitely want to have you guys back out, especially as we start implementing, you know, some of your guys' philosophies in the food tribe. It would be great to, you know, let our audience know, let some of our clients and, you know, potential clients know, you know, what it was like incorporating, again, human-centered design into our organization. Again, I would just love to stress to everyone that's listening that human-centered design, again, is about people and, you know, again, you know, diagnosing and fixing problems. And so, you know, you can apply that to different levels of your organization, from like employee experience to, you know, customer fulfillment, the way that you deal with your clients and your customers, to the way that you deal with your vendors. And it's just about, you know, understanding these things and, you know, again, understanding the way that people work, right? So, you know, super excited. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Unless you guys had anything burning that you wanted to let our audience know, you know, definitely just, you know, wanted to say thank you again. And
All right. So that is it for the day, y'all. Hopefully you found some value in today's lesson and watch party. You know, again, if you have any additional questions or if you need some additional help, Food Tribe is here. We can help restaurant owners and operators with your job descriptions, writing a kick-ass job description. We can help you with hosting employee events, employee hiring events, employee engagement events, right? We can help you conduct some research if you want to have better conversations with your customers. Your employees or future employees are examples of customers, right, that you want to have better conversations with. Let us know. As part of our restaurant bailout initiative, our focus is on helping you to bridge the gaps, to cross the challenges that are preventing or keeping your business from being as successful as it should be, right? And we are hearing that hiring as a challenge. So let's get creative. Let's solve this very common problem of hiring in an uncommon way. Feel free to contact me at hello@foodtribeusa.co. That's hello@foodtribeusa.co. And I will get back in touch with you so we can discuss. Peace and love, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you soon.